نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد نعلم أنك يضيق صدرك بما يقولون فسبح بحمد ربك وكن من الساجدين واعبد ربك حتى يأتيك اليقين بارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعني وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المؤمنين واستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي رب يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير وبك نستعين يا فتاح يا فتاح يا فتاح صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم الأمين Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today is a National Islamophobia Khutbah Day, and I was asked by many organizations, many WhatsApp group to dedicate today's khutbah on the topic of Islamophobia. And this is something that most of the masajid across the UK, most of the imams across the UK do it on an annual basis. And I think this is a topic that should be emphasized about every now and then, that should be reminded about every now and then. The rise of hatred of Islam and the rise of Islamophobia, we find our politicians, we find media pundits always mentioning us, always singling us out. There are laws that are enacted against us across the globe and in many, many Western lands. My advice to myself and all of you is that we should study history, because this is not the first time and it won't be the last time. And history broadens our horizon. History makes us mature. History makes us understand some of the beneficial tactics about how we can respond to what we are seeing in our times. So inshallah, in today's brief khutbah, I want to go back and look at 5 basic parallels that we see in the seerah of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also in historical examples of the past that can be shown to be replicating in our times. Because my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, one of our goals is to live peacefully. One of our goals is not to be murdered and massacred. One of our goals is to be able to worship Allah, practice Islam, live our Islam without the fear of persecution. So when you look into the seerah, our Prophet ﷺ was physically attacked. Assassinations attempts were made against him, and this did not happen out of the blue. Similarly, this July we commemorated the anniversary, the 27 years of the massacre of Srebrenica in Bosnia, where 10,000 Muslim men and boys were rounded up and slaughtered in one day. 11th of July 1995. This is in your lifetime, this is in my lifetime. Many of us remember that day when 10,000 Muslim men and boys were rounded up and slaughtered in one day. What was their crime? What was their crime? They shared the same ethnicity, they shared the same race. What was their crime? It was their religion. It happened, but it didn't happen out of the blue. This is a multi-step process, and today, inshallah, we will mention 5 of them. Number 1, where does it all begin? How does it all begin? What is the first tactic? Number one, putting social pressure, stereotypes, caricatures, pointing out differences between you and them, and then exaggerating those differences. When you look at the early Muslims in Makkah, the Quraysh began to say that they, Muslims, they had a different religion now. They have rejected our religion. They are cutting the ties of kinship. So they accused the Muslims of cutting the ties of kinship. They accused the Muslims of having a different religion, having a different civilization, having a different culture. You look at what is happening nowadays. Oh, these Muslims, they persecute their women. Their women are forced to cover themselves, to wear burqa and hijab. And they do this and they do that. They point out the differences. And then they exaggerate those differences. And then sometimes they even lie about those differences. The crimes that they themselves are guilty of, they cut, they paste, and then they throw it upon the other. So the Quraysh in the early Islam, the Quraysh accused the Muslims of cutting the ties of kinship. But in reality, who were the ones really cutting the ties of kinship? It was not the Muslims. It was the other way around. Today we see that we Muslims are accused of being the violent ones, the terrorists. But who colonized the entire world? Who plundered 90% of the world? Who went and invaded many lands, and they did this and they did that? Who did that? It wasn't the Muslims. So typically speaking, these stereotypes in reality, typically they were completely false, and they are completely false. But they have to be done. The narrative is created of us versus them. We are this way and they are that way. Whether it is true or false, the narrative has to be built up, otherwise you cannot go to stage 2. What is stage 2? Stage 1 was social pressure. Stage 1 was stereotyping. Stage 1 was caricaturization. What is stage 2? Stage 2 is putting political pressure. It's putting political pressure. Laws are enacted. Things are done politically, and they can never be done without stage 1. You can never create hatred out of nowhere. You cannot pass a law out of nowhere. You have to build up the hype. You have to create the hatred from years on end. Look at the Quraysh, look at the early Muslims. The Quraysh, they boycotted the Muslims. Don't we know the story? They boycotted the Muslims. They enacted a treaty that nobody is going to buy and sell, nobody is going to marry, nobody is going to do anything with Banu Hashim and the Muslims. It didn't happen out of nowhere. It happened after 5 or 6 years of social pressure, then this political pressure came. Similarly, you see with the minorities, what's happening with the minorities today. If you don't trust me, go and look into the history. There was a governor of California, I believe his name is Kerry, the governor of California, and his campaign was no more Chinese people. Literally, that was a slogan. I'm not making it up. You go and look it up. No more Chinese people. And he won with a landslide. He won with a landslide victory. What happened in Donald Trump case? What happened in the Brexit case? What happened in Donald Trump case? How did they win? I think Islams and Muslims have a problem with us, and his people go wild. I want to build the wall. His people go wild. What happened in the case of Brexit? These immigrants are going to come and take our jobs. What happened there? This politics always comes after social pressure. You cannot enact such laws until and unless you do propaganda, until and unless you stereotype. So this is stage number 2. Political laws are passed after the stereotypes perpetrated for many years. And also you can look at the example of the Jews in Germany, in Nazi's Germany. Time is limited, but you can go over all of these examples one by one. So this is stage 2. Laws are passed. Once the laws are passed, another interesting phenomena that happens after that, or sometimes at the same time as that, is that people who were never united, all of a sudden, they become united. Only because they have created a false enemy. And it is us or the other. And whoever is the other, they become united against them. So for example, the Quraysh, they were never united with the Ghassans up north. The Quraysh were never united with what we call the Ahzab, the confederate armies. They were disparate people. They were different people. They had nothing in common. The first time in human history, the Arabs of polytheism became united was when Muslims and Islam came, because finally they had one thing in common. And what was that thing? What was that thing? That they were not Muslim. That was the only thing that they had common. Historically speaking, these tribes were never united. The largest army that was ever called pre-Islam was in the Battle of Ahzab, right or wrong? The largest army. How? Where did all of these armies come from? Some of them were Christians, some of them were Sabians, some of them worshipped different gods of the Arabs, some of them had animosity with one another from the times of Jahiliyyah. They had nothing in common. The only thing they had in common, and the reason they all came together was what? their hatred for Islam. And similarly, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, unfortunately today when you look around, and this is a reality in many Western lands, Muslims are the scapegoats in many Western lands. Bills are being passed to ban the burqa. Bills are being passed to ban the building of the minaret. It's targeting Islam, don't you think so? It's directly targeting Islam. In France, they have banned the modest covering in the swimming pool. And in France, you can go without wearing anything. It is legal for a woman to walk without wearing anything and she will not be fined. But if she covers herself and go to the swimming pool, she will be fined. What kind of ridiculousness is that? What kind of ludicrousness is that? This is what happens when large segments of world find commonality. Loyalties are formed based upon cutting off from the one, from the other. And unfortunately, in this case, the other is us. So countries find uniformity. Countries find commonality just by simply against the other. And we see many manifestations of that. Some of them are a little bit too deep. But for example, when that tragedy happened, and it is a tragedy, of the French cartoonist and the reporters being killed. It is a tragedy. We don't support that. Absolutely, we don't support that. Well, what was the backlash? Does anybody remember? What was the backlash? 50 world leaders flew in the next day. They left everything behind, all of their affairs behind. 50 world leaders, they flew in the next day and they stood in solidarity. Do you remember that? How many terrorist attacks have been done by various groups? How many Caucasian terrorists have done crazy things, unthinkable things in these lands? When was the last time all the world leaders flew in together and said that we are against terrorism? What happened in France when those cartoonists were killed, and again I will say it as explicitly as I can, we are against the killing of those cartoonists. I have done a khutbah about that. I've given a khutbah about that. We are against that. We don't do these things. We don't kill people. We can verbally criticize them. We can have an academic discussion with them, but we don't harm people physically. We don't do that. And we don't incite anger and aggression. We don't do that. But nonetheless, they were killed. They were killed, and the Western world all of a sudden felt a sense of solidarity. Why did not they feel a sense of solidarity when 50 people were killed in Los Angeles? Why didn't they feel a sense of solidarity when so many terrorist attacks happened that happened from within their own races? This is the reality, my dear brother. I'm not trying to portray myself as a victim or portraying you as a victim. This is the reality. You will find it in the seerah, in history, and in modern examples. Loyalties being formed based upon these issues. Loyalties being formed. So this is stage number. Does anyone remember? What was this point? 2. You sure? Stage number, it is point number 2? Point number 3. Point number 3. Loyalties being formed based upon these issues. Point number 4. By the way, here I need to mention, because I made it a point here, there are always an exemption. So I don't want to intimidate and frighten us all. There's always an exemption. So what happened in New Zealand was an exemption. What happened with the Prime Minister of New Zealand was an exemption, right? She took a principled stand, and she didn't side with those or with those groups who wanted to make it a political issue, right? But this is point number 3. Loyalties are formed based upon these issues. Point number 4. Anything that these minorities do, whether they are Chinese Americans, whether they are Jews in Germany, or whether they are Muslims in Western, anything, and I say it again, anything that emanates from within this minority is automatically interpreted in the lens of the stereotypes of 1, 2, and 3. Remember 1, 2, and 3? It's always interpreted of the stereotypes of 1, 2, and 3. No matter what we do, we will never win. No matter what we do, they are always going to find something negative, distorted, and they will read into it, even if there is nothing to be read into. If you look at the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, just before the Battle of Badr, there was a small group of Sahaba. They were tracking a group of Quraysh, and the skirmish happened, and one of the Quraysh was killed. One of their people was killed, and they made such a big deal out of it. You Muslims, you terrorists, you killed one of us, and that too in the sacred month. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala immediately revealed these verses in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الشَّهْرِ الْحَرَامِ قِتَالٍ فِيهِ قُلْ قِتَالٌ فِيهِ كَبِيرٌ. Yes, killing somebody in the sacred month is very wrong. It's not right. You cannot justify that. But then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, what did you do? وَصَدٌّ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَالْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ وَإِخْرَاجُ أَهْلِهِ مِنْهُ أَكْبَرُ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. You kicked people out of their homes. You wage a war against innocent people just because they believed in Allah and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Who has done more zulm? Yes, whatever happened was wrong, but who has done more zulm? Similarly, in the case of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, when he went to Fir'aun and he asked Fir'aun to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Fir'aun said, who are you? وَفَعَلْتَ فَعَلَتَكَ الَّتِي فَعَلْتَ وَأَنْتَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. You are the murderer. You killed that person. How dare you come to me and tell me to worship Allah alone when you are the kafir? وَأَنْتَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And what did Musa alayhi salatu wasalam say? He said, قَالَ فَعَلْتُهَا إِذًا وَأَنَا مِنَ الضَّالِّينَ. I did wrong. I killed someone accidentally. عَلَيَّ أَنْ عَبَّتَ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ. But are you going to ignore the fact that you have subjugated an entire civilization? You have enslaved all of Bani Israel? Are you going to deny that? And now you come to me and tell me that I've killed somebody. Yes, I did wrong. قَالَ فَعَلْتُهَا إِذًا وَأَنَا مِنَ الضَّالِينَ. I have done something wrong. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me. But what about your own crimes? Look yourself in the mirror first. That's what Musa alayhi salatu wasalam is saying to Fir'aun. And today you look at, there is no denying, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, there is no question that we have some crazy people in our faith as well. We have a small group of lunatics in our faith doing crazy things. But what about other faith traditions? What about other horrific things that are going on that has nothing to do with our faith? To do any action that we do and then stereotype it and then read into it, subhanAllah, we are blamed for their problems as well. You see what's happening in Iraq, these Muslims don't get along, the Shia-Sunni differences, the conflict of Shia-Sunni. Iraq never had the conflict that it has now post-American invasion. It never had that kind of a conflict. Don't blame us for what you have caused. This is the reality. They cause it, and then they blame us for that, and then they have the audacity to blame it for us, to blame us for that. And similarly, if you look at the Jews of Germany, no matter what the Jews did, the Nazis always read into them, you are the fifth columners. You will bring us down. You will be the cause of our downfall. Everything that happened in Nazi Germany, they blamed it on the Jews. Even though they were the ones many times who fought for Germany, but they blamed the minority. So my dear brothers, this is point number 4. No matter what the minority does, it will be constructed, and then the narrative will be changed such that it is fed into the stereotypes of the broader civilization. And then, only then, you get to point number 5. And what is point number 5? All-out war, assassination, incarceration camps, rounding up, death camps. That only happens after all of that has been done. You look at Bosnia and what happened in Bosnia. You look at Germany. You did not have the Holocaust. You did not have the concentration camp until all these other things that I just mentioned happened. You look at America post 9/11, and subhanAllah, the irony of the ironies is that just to be polite, I don't want to use a harsh term. I have a harsh term here, but my religion taught me to uphold, a higher standard. But you have to be not very intelligent to be a racist. You have to be very ignorant to be a racist. So what happened in America post 9/11? Sikhs were killed. Hindus were pushed on the train track. Why? Because they thought all Muslims looked the same. All Arabs looked the same. All Muslims looked the same, and they thought they were the Muslims as well. The Sikh temple was attacked in Oregon because they thought it was a Muslim temple. That actually happened. I'm not making it up. It happened. So point number 5 is, when you get violence, all-out war, incarceration camps, concentration camps, assassinations. Did you ever ask yourself, why did Prophet ﷺ make the hijrah? Why did he make the hijrah? For 13 years he was there, facing the persecution. Why did he make the hijrah? Because the Arabs and the Quraysh did the one thing that was unthinkable. And it was to kill one of their own innocently. It was unprecedented. The tribe never buckled on itself. The tribe never killed one of its own, but they unilaterally decided that we are going to assassinate one of our own, and that is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But it didn't happen out of the blue, my dear brothers. The point that I'm trying to make here, it happened, but it only happened after all of these 4 steps that we just mentioned are followed. So my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, the point is, I'm not trying to intimidate anyone here. I'm not trying to frighten us here, but we have to be real. The times that we are living in are genuinely perilous. We cannot afford to shove our heads in the ground and ignore what is going on. I tell you honestly, the potential of our situation to go from bad to worse is very real. After Liverpool terror attack, the Telegraph newspaper ran an article in which they suggested that since the bomber was from Middle Eastern background, it increased the likelihood that that attack was Islamist inspired. I'm not making it up. Islamist inspired, that's the term that he used. What is Islamist inspired? And now because it is established now that he wasn't a Muslim, he has converted to Christianity, and wallahi, just for the sake of consistency, but wallahi, I'm a person who hate the abuse of religious terms, And I will detest the media, I will hate the media if they do that. But just for the sake of consistency, I really wonder if the Telegraph or Sun or Daily Mail or any right-wing media outlet will ever call that person a Christian terrorist or Christianity-inspired terrorist. Wallahi, I will hate them for doing that. But just for the sake of consistency, I want to see if they will ever do that. I believe you all watched the testimony of Azim Rafiq, am I saying it right? Yeah? In front of the sports committee, how he faced the racism, institutional racism in Yorkshire Cricket Club, when they were told to go and sit near the toilets, when they were called elephant washers, when every time on the tour when they passed by, they would pass by a man with a beard, is that your dad? They would pass by a corner shop, is this owned by your uncle? The word Paki was used constantly. The word Kevin was used by, I think, Gary Balance. That word was used, he used that word to describe everyone with color. And it happened in front of the coaching staff, it happened in front of all the senior officials. Nobody did anything about it. It became a norm in that institution, in that cricket club. So my dear brothers, the potential for our situation to go from bad to worse is very real. Allah is our protector, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also wants us to do things and not just to sit back and ignore. Allah wants us to take reasonable measures to protect ourselves. Prophet did the hijrah. He protected himself by going in the cave of Sur. He covered his tracks. He had the food in the cave. That was his preparation. وَأَعِدُّوا لَهُمْ مَسْتَطَعْتُمْ Allah tells you in the Quran, make your preparations. Allah doesn't want us to be full. Islam doesn't want us to just go into the masjid and make dua. Yes, dua is one half of it. The other half is to do things, to prepare, to make some plan. Yes, salah and dua is an essential part. But along with that, there has to be some wisdom. There has to be some preparedness. There has to be some actual activism. The seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is nothing but activism. He didn't go into Kaaba and just make dua to Allah. He taught, he preached, he had a strategy in place. He did something, my dear brothers. And wallahi, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, I will say it again. The times that we are living in, the potential to go from bad to worse is very, very real. Look around you. You know, we can see the rhetoric from our guy in Downing Street when he called our sisters letterboxes just because they wear burqa. And you can make fun of him as much as you want to, of his hairstyle, or of him, or of his English, as much as you want to. But the reality is, let us not fool ourselves, he won with the majority people vote. And we still don't know what's going to happen. Even if we get rid of him, even if he's not elected, this sentiment has been riled up. This evil hatred is rampant and mainstream. So let us not fool ourselves that we come to the masjid on Jum'ahs and we are packed. Or we go to the conventions and there are tens and thousands of people there. At the end of the day, we are less than 4.5% of this land. And what that means is, to end on a positive note, what that means is every single one of us has a role to play. We cannot afford to go into hiding. Every single one of us has to become proactive. Inshallah, we'll talk more about it in the next khutbah, how we can become more proactive and how can we challenge Islamophobia. But at this point, I will just give you one thing. For many of you, your circle of friends, your circle of influence, you're the only Muslim that they know. Amongst your office workers, amongst your colleagues, even amongst your neighbors, maybe you are the only Muslim that they know. If you're not going to live up to your traditions, if you will not embody Islam, if you are embarrassed about your identity and faith, and you change your name and you pretend that you are not a Muslim, then can you really blame them when they believe what happens or what they see in the Telegraph or Sun or Mail or any right-wing media outlet? Can you really blame them when I myself and you yourself have not done the job? At this base level, my dear brothers, and this is a to be continued talk, inshallah, we'll talk about more on this in the next week, inshallah, in the next Jummah, inshallah. But the one message that I want to leave you with, do not trivialize your role. Every single person who is sitting in front of me, you are the ambassadors of Islam. You have a role to play. And one of the most important success stories, purely from the political situation, is the civil rights success stories. Civil rights was not something that politicians wanted. Civil rights was not something that powers to be were eager about. But the popular sentiment was roused up. People wanted it, and government cannot deny it. Yes, there is still racism. Yes, there is still many problems. By and large, this is something that now legislation has support. Legislation has supported the equality of all races. And subhanAllah, this is just one generation ago. This is not a lifetime ago. This is just one generation ago. And we all benefited from civil rights movement in this country as well. We are here because of anti-racism. The point that I'm trying to make, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, the problems of our society are our problems. The problems of hatred, xenophobia, the problem of racism are our problems. The problems of Islamophobia particularly are our problems. We have to take our responsibility. Every single one of us has a role to play. You cannot pass the buck. You cannot pass the responsibility on to other people. And inshallah, we'll talk more about it in the next khutbah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant understanding. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and our families and our children. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring about peace in this land of ours. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to worship Him, to live our Islam in peace and harmony. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to embody the values of Islam, die upon the faith, and give this faith on to our next generation. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us united in this dunya, and may Allah reunite us in the hereafter. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Brothers are requested to